Hi everyone, Rachel Weaver here. I am on faculty at Lighthouse Writers Workshop as well as staff. I've been putting together a series of videos called The Story of a Book, in which I ask a novelist or a memoir writer, an author, to tell us the story of how their book came to be a book. So today we have longtime Lighthouse faculty member Karen Palmer. Hi Karen.
Hi, Rachel.
Joining us from LA, right?
That's right, Los Angeles.
Yep. So she is going to tell us the story of the memoir that she has been working on for quite some time now. Hold on, Karen, I'm going to make your video big. And then, okay, you're all set.
Okay, the story of the memoir. This is a book that I have been working on probably for about 10 years now. I published 2 novels quite a while ago and thought of myself always as a novelist and figured that that's what I would write for the rest of my life. But I had this thing happen to me. I had one of those events that occurs in your life that seems like a great story. And what happened was 30 years ago now, I completely changed my identity. I left my family, my friends, my job, everyone I knew, because I had an abusive ex-husband. We were divorced by then, but he was still stalking me and making death threats, and had kidnapped our younger daughter and kept her for a while. And when I got her back, the only thing I could do was run. So I ran from California to Colorado with the man that I wound up marrying. And we created false identities for ourselves. We forged documents. We got phony social security numbers. We changed our names. We enrolled the kids in school, said that we had been homeschooling them all this time, and so they had no records. And we proceeded to live this life in Colorado as other people. Meanwhile, my ex-husband back in California fell apart. He had always had a criminal streak. He was a man who was fond of guns and was, sociopath is a word that gets used and abused, but he had those tendencies. So he spent a certain amount of time trying to find me with the idea that he would kill me. Anyway, so I had this thing that happened to me, and I wrote these 2 books, and the 2 books that I did write, the 2 novels, were so out of my own personal experience that I figured that anyone that ever read them would never know that I had written them. And because they were published under another name, I didn't think I would ever get caught. After those books were published, I thought I was casting around for more material, and I thought, well, maybe I'll try to fictionalize what happened to me. And I started writing this book where I changed, all the details and the characters and the children and everything. I thought I could get to the heart of what had happened to me through fiction, because that's the way my mind worked. But I couldn't get the book to work. I worked on it off and on for about 4 years, and I sent it to my agent, and she wasn't happy with it, and I had friends read it and they weren't happy with it, and I wasn't happy with it, and I thought, this is such a good story, why doesn't it work? And then I finally realized that it didn't work because it wasn't true. And I didn't know anything about memoir writing because I am not a nonfiction writer by temperament, and I don't read a lot of memoirs, so I wasn't, I didn't even know what that world was. But once I explained to my agent when it happened to me, she said, oh my God, yes, of course this has to be a memoir. And then I fell into a hole of, if I wrote it as a memoir, my ex-husband would see it. It doesn't matter that it has a different name on it. The story has certain particulars that anyone who knew me would recognize immediately. And I didn't know what to do. So I dithered and dithered and dithered. And then one Christmas, our 2 daughters, who were grown by this time, were in town visiting for Christmas. And my older daughter had just graduated from law school. And as a present for my husband, for her stepfather, she had started, as her first act as an attorney, adoption proceedings so that he could adopt her. And we had all this, everybody crying. It was, it was so emotional. Our younger daughter, who was in the service in the Navy, was just getting ready to go to Afghanistan. So we had all this emotion in the house. And while everyone was asleep, I couldn't sleep. I was all geared up, and I got on the computer, as I did periodically, though I hadn't done it in a long time, and Googled my ex-husband, because I kept thinking, well, if the girls adopt him, I mean, what happens to their natural father? And I Googled, and I had a private detective track him down at one point, but he couldn't quite get him. So I knew generally where he was, and I Googled that location, and up popped a news story in a small town newspaper in California about a man found dead in a park. And that man was my ex-husband. So this was, like beyond emotional. But as the writer in me said, oh, now I can write the story. Now I don't have to worry about somebody tracking me down and harming me or my family if I tell the story of what actually happened to me. So this was 2009, and I thought, okay, I'm going to write this little quickie memoir, and it'll be exciting and interesting, and the agent seems very keen on it, and it'll sell, and I'll be, everything will be cool. No, no, it doesn't, actually writing it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be, because it entailed putting myself back in that body, putting myself back as that girl at age 17 who met a man 20 years older than her and was swept off her feet and thought that she was having a grand love affair, and not understanding that this was an abusive person. I was with my first husband for 13 years. We had 2 children together. And the emotions of living through all that and trying to get it down was very hard. But I did get it down, and it still didn't work. And it still didn't work because it needed structure. It needed some idea to hold it together. It couldn't just be the story of my bad marriage, my bad marriage, and I ran away. Lots of people are in abusive marriages, and it's the commonest story in the world. What about the situation was interesting? So it required rethinking again, and I finally thought that what I needed to write about was what having gone through this experience meant for how we think about identity, how we think about who we are. Like, how do you know who you are? It's like, are you who you say you are? We ran around for the last 30 years saying we were people we weren't. Are you who other people say you are? Everyone else thinks of me as Karen Palmer. Karen Palmer is not my real name, although it is now, and it's my legal name now, but it's not the name I was born with. But is that who I am? And it took working through this long manuscript and reworking it and thinking of how to bring in the outside world, bringing in issues of crime and parental abduction, and again, how identity plays out in these different spheres. So working on the book has been a long process, and it's still not done, although it's very, very close. And am I talking over my time?
Oh, you're doing great.
I guess the only thing I can say about it is that it's so worth doing, even if you think that it's hard and you're never going to be done. Is someday you are done, and if the story means something to you, then it's worth pursuing.
It sounds to me, as I listen to you talk about the process of writing memoir, it sounds very different than the process of writing fiction, in that there seems to be these like specific stages of it that you have to make time for, right? So you have to make time for reliving the emotions of what you went through, what the younger you went through. And then you have to make the time for changing or sort of shaping the elements of your life into story.
Right.
Right. And it seems like when, just based on what you were saying, when you first started out, you didn't anticipate all of those individual stages necessarily.
I most certainly did not. Yes. I thought I just had to get it down. But, you know, part of the problem that I had writing it also is like, if you're looking at the shape of a story, for a long time when I was trying to write it, it had no ending.
Right.
So it's like we spent so many years waiting for the other shoe to drop, and the other shoe never did drop. So it's like the narrative had to take into account the fact that the shoe never dropped. And how do you make that interesting to the reader? It's like I needed to be very careful, like I thought in some early versions of the book, that it read as if I was setting it up for some big showdown at the end. You know, that there would be
because that's what, yeah. Right, because that's what you would do if it was fiction, probably.
Yes. And it just, you know, it's sort of the logical shape to a story like that. But this does not have that kind of an ending. What it has is this sort of unresolved ending, which is, you know, both sad and hopeful. You know, it's like we made a good life for ourselves, and we made a good life for our children, and we kept them safe. My ex-husband was an extremely dangerous man, and we kept them safe. But there was a cost to doing it, and coming to terms with the cost of it is where I had to take the story, instead of thinking of it as plot so much. You know, this happened and this happened and this happened.
Right, and it sounds like maybe you weren't anticipating that when you set out to write a memoir.
No, because I didn't, you know, I think that's something that people fall into with memoir. They think if they have an interesting situation, that's all they need.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and then I got so sick of writing about myself. You know, that was another thing. It has taken a long time because I work on it for a while, and then I get sort of overwhelmed with, you know, it's too much me. I can't stand it. So, you know, it's like, that's why I wanted to write fiction, was because I didn't want to write about myself. And then to be sort of stuck in writing about yourself, I have to figure out a way to make it interesting to other people and also interesting to myself, so I can stand to do it. And again, the thing that made it interesting to me was thinking about kind of larger issues and not just what happened to me.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Karen. I really, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye-bye.